The Super Bowl is set for 2024, so what now? I'll tell you what now. It's time for a first look of the big game coming up in 2 weeks here. Of course, yesterday, the conference championship games. I hope you guys all fared well in that endeavor, but we got to get the prep work going for the Super Bowl itself. Of course, the big board coming up as well, so we're not going to talk about that today, but there's a lot of football still to come up here, even though the season is about to wrap up. So let's get into it, and let's pull up the brackets here. Shout out to the chat, as always, our guy Charles here, bright and early, waiting for the stream, and I do appreciate that here, of course, as we dig into here for the first time. And we also talk about yesterday's games. And the one thing I will say here for yesterday's games, I feel like we got a lot right here. And here's something you guys might not be aware of over the weekend. Splash Play, one of our most viewed videos ever over the weekend, was the division preview here, the conference championship preview, excuse me, for DraftKings on that one. Ended up getting a lot of views from a lot of people that we don't normally get views from. So point being, I'm very proud of the fact that I think we got like every take right on that one, where the winning lineup yesterday went to actually one of these stochastic guys, actually the guy who heads up their finance department now, but is also a top DFS player, Steve Buzzard. What it ended up winning yesterday, a Brock Purdy single stack, only 2 Niners like we talked about, and filling it out the rest of the roster. We also talked about playing the Chiefs upset in particular as a way to try to get different on the slate. That ended up hitting in a big way. So I feel good about what we did in that video. And it's always one of those things where when you get seen by new people, obviously I trust all you guys here where I can give my takes with impunity. I can feel pretty good about what we're talking about here, about the analytics that I talk about and the takes that I land on and how I do it. Well, we do have hits like that in front of the most views that we gotten all season long. I feel pretty good about that one. So hopefully you guys did well this weekend and followed some of that along. So it's Spags. Ran into Stevens A15 for DK best ball drafts. And round 3, they ran the pot off the table. Well, that's not great. I will say I was going through the drafters portfolios a little bit. On drafters, the one in first place was just the guy who picked players randomly, like played it like FFPC, where you're picking one player from each team. So look, playoff best ball, man, I was eliminated last week from my final underdog teams. DraftKings got wiped out in the wild card round because too much Miami everywhere. Playoff best ball, I warned you guys about this one. I've mentioned, some of my anathema towards playoff best ball a little bit, is that I think it is a lot of luck situations. I think it's a pod luck in particular is particularly noteworthy. But I would say for playoff best ball, if you survived, more power to you. If you didn't survive, then there are assholes who did. And they drafted stupidly, and now they're being rewarded for it. And unfortunately, that's the way it goes. But at the end of the day, what's going to win those tournaments on DK, on Underdog, is going to be a fully fleshed out roster that has bringbacks on both sides, that has full teams there. So I think that's the main thing to watch out for. It's like some of these guys might have wiped out your pod and whatever. People who we saw draft stupidly on stream might have wiped you out. But ultimately, when they get to the finals, that was always the thing, is like you get to the finals, you don't have the right guys, right configuration. And I would say that's more likely than not to be the case. And the DK $20 playoff best ball, if Lions won, I would have had a full team for the finals. I only have 3. Yeah, I think there were a lot of people out there. I know, heard from one guy who was really excited about his Ravens-Lions team, and I was just like, all right, man, going to be tough sledding. But I think that's sort of how it was for a lot of people. A lot of people bought in on the Ravens. So a lot of people tried to get those Ravens-Niners configurations that ended up completely getting wiped out. I would say the main lesson for playoff best ball is sort of relying on teams that we know have been there before. I think it's the thing that does matter. The Chiefs have been there time and time again. Patrick Mahomes, you might have seen the tweets going around, playoff record. I believe he's 14-3. Lamar in the playoffs 2-4. Wins aren't a QB stat. That's the main caveat you have to have. But it is still something with any sort of situation where these guys coming in, like Mahomes has been there enough times. These 2 teams have played this exact Super Bowl in the past, obviously different QBs on the Niners side. The point being, like, I think there is something to having that pedigree, to having that experience, and having those reps. And I always use the analogy from when I was a kid. Michael Jordan took him beating the Pistons. It took 2 years of that where he got wiped out when I was a little kid, and then ended up finally overcoming it. Then he went on the big run of championships, then retired, then came back, won more championships. I do think that's the case for a lot of teams. Where the Lions, maybe they were more talented team than the Niners yesterday. Maybe they should have won that game, but I don't think they were actually ready to be in that spot. And I think some of the mistakes there, the Niners had their mistakes on their end as well. But like a handoff fumble, a ball off your face, like it's just things that shouldn't happen when you're a championship caliber team that has been through those motions before. So that's the main thing I would say for them. Hopping to say GM, I'll have to say it's F Brock Purdy. Yeah, look, Brock Purdy got there. I didn't play a lot of Brock Purdy on the DK slate yesterday because I thought that was the way to go. Play a lot of Mahomes. I think still could have won with Mahomes, but Purdy ended up going there with a single stack, and that's look, he played his heart out. Purdy, I thought, put the team on his back down the home stretch there, but I think we also saw Kyle Shanahan trying to protect Brock Purdy from himself a little bit down the home stretch of that game. Obviously, a little more swing passes to Debo, a little more low-risk kind of throws for him. And Brandon Ayuk, I think you kind of see when the team is running hot, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, those guys are getting fed. When the team is like a little more close to the vest and a little more worried about what Brock Purdy's doing, you then start to see a little bit less of those plays downfield, a little bit less of that success, and Brandon Ayuk has to catch passes off of guys' faces. So that's sort of how that goes for the Niners. At 4 or 5 teams in finals, 2 have full squads, 3 of them have 4 guys. There you go. Good job by Primetime KG here. Look, I hope you guys did well with it. For me, playoff best ball, I just don't get the joy out of it. And I think as a result, I'm not as good as I should be. But also, like, if you make big bets on teams and you just don't get the right outcome, like I was really heavy on the Miami this year, and that did not work out. Obviously, Dallas as well, Buffalo as well. So my 3 picks that I thought had a lot of value in those tournaments just frankly didn't get there. So kind of have to suck it up. That's why I'm personally more ready for the big board. Rest of the Niners game. Actually, I'm going to pull up the box scores for this one because we have a little more to talk about here. Do what I try to identify a few things. The one thing I want to identify right away, Jameson Williams. So Jameson Williams, a guy that we have beat up a lot in the stream over the last month that talked about how when is he ever going to get there? Still ended up playing a good amount of him on DraftKings last night. And still a player that I think is kind of interesting with Jameson Williams overall, but what he's going to be heading into 2024, where people obviously very enthusiastic about him heading into year 2. He's being drafted in the 50s last year. Now you have this big box score game that frankly was still a little bit shitty. 1 for 42 in the run game, obviously broke the touchdown on that one. It was a tremendous run by him, but not the kind of play you expect from a wide receiver over and over again. But Jameson Williams, 2 catches and a touchdown besides that, of course, has a garbage time TD. I think Jameson Williams is going to get steamed up again. I don't know if it's going to be quite to the same extent as it was last year. He was basically being treated like a Christian Watson, like these guys who are going to make a big leap in year 2, like a Pickens. I think he probably goes in like the 80-90 range on best ball this year. For Jameson Williams, though, like I've seen enough of him that I don't think he's ever going to be a high target guy unless we get camp reports. Maybe a Amon-Ra St. Brown were to go out and get injured. Then maybe Jameson Williams is just going to get that work because somebody has to get targets out there. It does feel like overall we see the target shares here. I mean, 9 catches for Sam Laporte yesterday, 13 targets, actually led the team behind our guy Amon-Ra St. Brown, who did have a good day against that Niners zone defense, but there were stretches of the game where Goff just wasn't even finding him at all, and I think that was where Amon-Ra St. Brown's ceiling got a little bit capped. But like Laporte is the number 2 receiver here, I think. Jameson Williams would have to be substantially better, where Jameson Williams is going to have values if you can actually more reliably convert those big plays, those gimmicky kind of plays. And if he can maybe get to like 5 targets a game, that's where he starts to make sense a little bit more. But I think he still is like a little bit trappy. Was impressed by what he did in that game in terms of like the results, but I do think that people are going to really start to chase him up again. And he basically is a guy that had 4 opportunities in the game, 3 targets, 1 rush attempt. So that's the kind of player that I would say we kind of want to watch out for, where I think there's a lot of ways that he can fail. And I think when you have that one big box score game in the playoffs, Jerick McKinnon being the case last year, of course, carried the Chiefs through a lot of the playoffs last year. That's something where those guys end up getting steamed up a lot in the early parts of best ball. And I think Jameson Williams definitely going to get steamed up. All right. So besides that in this game, obviously David Montgomery, as we always talk about here, if the Lions are going to be in control of the game, David Montgomery is going to be a key part of that. David Montgomery also on that Steve Buzzard Millie Maker winning lineup yesterday. And also you can see the promo for Stochastic. Again, a guy won the Millie Maker with the tools on there, so check it out for yourself. NBA is going on right now, and also the guys have been crushing NBA. My pal Eric Lindquist has been on Splash Play before. Greg Ehrenberg, who's also been on Splash Play before. Those guys have had, I think, 20K and 30K wins. I think the other way around. Greg had 20K. Eric had 30K last week. Using Stochastic's tool. So if you really want to support the show, that promo code SPLASH down there, check the link in the description to save 15%. A great way to do that and support yourself. But David Montgomery was in the sim lineup for Steve Buzzard yesterday, where he did not play Christian McCaffrey, played David Montgomery instead. That is one thing where when we head into next year, I think we really need to be mindful of this stuff in DFS, where that's a seasoned player in Steve Buzzard, a guy who's won countless big tournaments. I think he's won a few Millie Makers before, but has definitely won a lot of the 100Ks as well. That's the move that a pro player makes, is like, everybody's going to play Christian McCaffrey. What did we talk about in the stream? You can then strip out one of Christian McCaffrey or Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, both guys end up not making the winning lineup in that. Actually, no, did Ayuk make it? Ayuk might have made it just barely. The point being is, like, we have these things to talk about DFS, and I sometimes have the issue of, like, I don't take it then far enough, where I'm saying I want to play a Lions upset, but I don't play the running back. Like, I was playing yesterday some Lions stuff, obviously playing a lot of Chiefs stuff as well, and I played a lot of Chiefs double stacks and whatever, but didn't take enough Pacheco with it. Had a lot of McCole Hardman that just kind of wandered into the lineups aimlessly. In a way that did not help out anything. And that was me trying to get different from some of the Jameson Williams stuff, because I just didn't believe in Jameson enough, and I had too much ownership of him. So I think that's where, some flaws in the process come that we have as players that haven't had our 10,000 reps of like trying to get unique over and over and over again. So that's one thing I'll say right away, is that when you know everybody's going to play Christian McCaffrey, you know everybody's going to play the running back in one game. If the other running back on the other side is good, and also it allows you to kind of paint a picture of a different game script. That's what the game script was yesterday, was David Montgomery getting a lot of touches early. And obviously as the game got away a little bit, they were still working in Gibbs, but like when the game got away, Montgomery was useless. When the game was in control, it was Montgomery getting a lot of that work, getting the touchdown as well. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind here when you are trying to think about DFS a little bit more, is like, you don't play McCaffrey. Yeah, that's one way to get unique, but then you have to pull up maybe one more lever, as we talked about on Friday, and the other lever that you pull is playing David Montgomery. We saw the Elijah Mitchell touchdown. I'm sure that helped out somebody in playoff best ball, but still Elijah Mitchell, mostly a worthless play overall. I don't even know why he was in on that snap, actually, that he got touchdown on. McCaffrey obviously had a lot of work in this game, but besides that, Elijah Mitchell, don't think he's going to be more involved in the Super Bowl is the main thing I would say for him. So very, very narrow DFS play. Definitely one where you want the Niners to be in control of a game, and then you need to also luck box Christian McCaffrey being just tired enough or just banged up enough to not be in for the goal line touch. Besides that, in this game, Debo getting a lot of work again. Kind of expect with how much the Chiefs get pressure, 30% pressure rate on the year for the Chiefs defense. Think they're going to be pressing to Debo a lot in that game, and probably a lot of Christian McCaffrey as well. But I think, on paper, it is less of a Brandon Ayuk spot, more of a more of a Debo spot overall, just because of the fact that it's going to be hard for Brock Purdy to get the time for an Ayuk to run these kind of elaborate routes. His ability to have success is really going to be him getting open in a phone booth kind of thing, him finding ways to create separation over the course of a route. If there's not enough time for him to create that separation over the course of a route, it's going to be a tough scene for Brandon Ayuk. So Debo Samuel could benefit from that. So I think right away, that'd be one player that I would try to plant a flag for, is that Debo Samuel, to me, I think the way they used him showed a sense of urgency in terms of just like the concern for Brock Purdy, as I mentioned earlier. I would say that Debo heading into the Super Bowl against the Chiefs team is going to get a lot of pressure. Like, people talk about Baltimore's pressure. Baltimore gets pressure about like 20% of the time. The Chiefs got it a lot more. And that was one thing that made me feel more confident in my Chiefs play as we went into yesterday. But I think that's something that's going to rear its ugly head for Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl as well. So I would say that's something that immediately, to me, like Debo, the way that he got used, I think really does portend a lot of what we could see in the Super Bowl. You saw targets get spread around a little bit more as well. George Kittle only got two catches on 3 targets. Juszczyk got 3 targets in this game. McCaffrey 4 on 5. Ayuk, though, had 8 targets, only caught 3 of them. So Ayuk definitely still a play that if he's going to be low on the Super Bowl, I think more interesting. But if Debo, which he has been for the last few weeks, Debo's been the lower owned guy out of him and Ayuk because he's been awkwardly priced. I don't think that necessarily changes. So I think for Debo, we'll see what the prices are on DraftKings in a moment here for the showdown slate. But I think Debo's one of those players that people are kind of missing a little bit why he works and why he doesn't work. And I think Ayuk is probably going to be cheaper and project better, but we will see in a moment. Anything else in this game here? Got one correction here. CMC landed on his head and tapped to be out for the Mitchell TD. I did not see that one. So there we go. That's what I was missing amidst child duty and all that stuff yesterday. But yeah, for CMC, I think that's, that even speaks more to the fact that like Eli Mitchell, not a player to worry about here for a showdown, especially like I think he probably picks up a little bit more ownership in that Millie Maker showdown for the Super Bowl. So I would say for Eli Mitchell, like knowing the fact he's not going to get a lot of work unless he's like $200, I probably just wouldn't play him. Anybody else to talk about this game? Josh Reynolds still had 4 targets, still had more work to Jameson Williams. Would think that Josh Reynolds in the Super Bowl becomes a little bit less owned. Again, having not looked at prices yet, but I would say for Josh Reynolds that he is the Goff safety blanket in the past. If they had advanced, I would think that Josh Reynolds would be a nice tournament play, but now Josh Reynolds is not going to be in the Super Bowl is what I'm kind of lost myself in the thought process there. The point being was that I think for Josh Reynolds, like he was a guy people have really relied on the home stretch. So it made sense to go Jameson Williams' way yesterday. And then if they had played in the Super Bowl, it would be like, okay, people would then go to Jameson Williams. You go to Josh Reynolds. That's the point I was trying to make here with how DFS works again. Anthony Ferkser was a guy that on the probably video I had highlighted, didn't call him out as a bet because like it was obviously very narrow. Had a very good anytime touchdown odds for an Anthony Ferkser touchdown on that one, and almost got in there. So that'd be very tilting if you had him at like, I think he was plus 4,500 or something. So Ferkser doesn't get the end zone. Does seem like for the Super Bowl, Zach Ertz should be in for that one, I would think. Kind of hard to understand why Ertz wasn't in for this game, but Ferkser, who doesn't really know the offense any better, was in. But I would say for Ferkser, definitely a player that, Zach Ertz would have been the guy, again, heading into the Super Bowl that would have had some opportunity. I don't know why I'm talking about the theoretical part of the Lions here. I'm really just tilted about the Lions not making the Super Bowl because they were controlled for that game. They were, I think, a more fun outcome. Obviously, playing the Chiefs probably wouldn't have been fun anyway. But I think for the Lions, man, there was a lot of ways to make unique stuff for the Super Bowl that would have been there, and now we don't get it, and Anthony Ferkser doesn't hit his anytime touchdown. What else to note in this game besides that? Juwan Jennings, again, no role really with Debo in, as we expect to be the case. Of course, Ronnie Bell, Ray McLeod, those guys are basically non-factors. One thing to also note is that the Niners offense over the course of a year, one of the most consolidated offenses in the NFL. So if one of these guys gets hurt in the Super Bowl, that's where you probably see more opportunity for Juwan Jennings, for even, I guess, if Ronnie Bell's active, for Ray McLeod, who probably will be active as a return guy. But that's the kind of play that I probably wouldn't want to make those guys a regular, reliable parts of a roster for the Super Bowl. But I would say, like, if you are trying to play 150 lineups, you're playing to 20 maxes even, you probably want a little bit of taste of those guys in lineups where you're not playing one of Debo, not playing one of Ayuk, not playing one of George Kittle. What else in this game? I also, just real fast, I feel like I have to kind of defend this. The fourth down stuff for Dan Campbell. I know a lot of you guys who watch this stream, you're analytically sound people, all of that. People who are going against Dan Campbell for not kicking things and not playing more conservatively. When you play aggressively all year round, it would be the biggest mistake to all of a sudden then playing more conservatively. And I know that's, that can be kind of touch and go, like a couple weeks ago in the Dallas game where Dan Campbell insisted on going for that 2-point conversion, even as I got bumped back and all that. But I think in general, like, you want your coach to stay aggressive. You want to do that stuff. So if you're a Lions fan, like, I think you should still feel really good about this. And there shouldn't be any questioning about Dan Campbell and what he did. Like, he's not a Brandon Staley. He's not a guy that kind of buckles under the pressure and then stops going for it. He kept going for it, and that's ultimately the plus EV move. But I think, in general, the risk aversion thing, when your team is good enough, you can afford to be risk averse. And I think that's where the Lions are going to run into something moving forward, where the team is getting close to being good enough that maybe they don't always have to go for fourth downs. And they're also, frankly, not great enough at imposing their will on every single snap that I think that for them, maybe you don't want to go for fourth down every single time, but ultimately I still would err on the side of saying, like, hey, if this guy's going to go for it, more power to him. But just relative to how the NFL goes, I think the guys who do it the best are the ones like Mike McDaniels. Obviously, he's not in the situation. A Nick Sirianni, kind of same thing, where those guys, if they're in close quarters, they're going to go for it on fourth down. They're going to run it, but they also know that their offense should be able to dominate and get that yard, get that whatever the case may be. I think in general, though, for the Lions, like, they're not quite good enough at always getting that 1 yard, whether it be through the air, whether it be through the ground. I think maybe they'll be good enough next year on defense that, like, you don't have to always force that action quite as much. Might fade QB in Super Bowl showdown. That definitely would be a way to do it. You got to play some narrow game scripts. We'll talk more about the potential game scripts, of course, as we get into kind of the lineup building portion of things. But I think in general for that, yeah, like, you could definitely fade both QBs in the showdown. It'll be one way to get unique. But obviously both guys, we saw them run a pretty good amount. Mahomes ran 6 times. Purdy ran 5 times for 48. I guess really more chunk plays for Purdy than anything. But both guys are going to run a good amount, so you do run into a little bit of risk there, especially if you are playing a captain pass catcher. So I don't know. We'll find out more when we run the sims and the optimizer and all that. For the Chiefs-Ravens game, so what stood out about this one? I thought Lamar, people are going to nickel and dime him a little bit. Kind of felt like he was in no man's land in that game, where the plays that were working the best were the downfield shots. But they didn't take a lot of them. Lamar, one thing I will give credit for, of course, let me pull up the ad while I give the credit to our app for it. Probably the only content out there in the world this past week that had an under on the Lamar Jackson rushing yards. He, of course, goes under here, 8 for 54. I believe the line was at 62.5. I will say that is kind of the main thing we talk about with betting data is, like, people are always terrified to fade star players, but ultimately unders on star players are a thing to always try to be mindful of, that you can hit as long as it does seem like a plus EV bet. So I'd say for Lamar Jackson hitting the under there. But that said, like, he ran hard. Like, he ran about as well as he can. 8 rushes in that game was about 10 rushes per game overall over the course of a year. So probably not as many rushing opportunities there from. But I would say for Lamar, like, I think he's going to get killed for this game. I don't know that he should. Kind of felt like the offensive line didn't help him out. Lamar did hang on to the ball a little bit longer. You can see the 4 sacks for 17 lost yards here is not great. But overall for Lamar, I think that the main thing for him is that I think that they need to trust him to go downfield more, and he needs to trust himself to go downfield more, because this is a Ravens team that's kind of like the opposite of what the Lions are, where they've played fairly conservatively throughout the year. Like, when they have a lead, they want to let the defense control things. They want to hand the ball off. They want to run it with Lamar a little bit. That's how they played. But in reality, like, their most high upside, their Super Bowl ceiling is going to be if they're really getting the ball downfield. If Lamar's got 400 air yards in addition to running 8 to 10 times a game. And that's what we always talk about here in terms of QB play. What do you look for? Guys who run the ball a lot, guys who throw the ball downfield. That's going to be the thing that always adds value to you as a fantasy football player. And Lamar is doing the first half really well in terms of running the ball. He's not getting the ball downfield reliably. And if he is getting the ball downfield, we saw the bad side of it, that Isaiah Likely forcing the ball into 3 defenders is not the play you want to see Lamar make. But I think in general, though, that's what happens when you let a guy get the ball downfield more. He's going to not make those boneheaded mistakes. When he's in desperation times, he's not getting the ball downfield as much. That's where we have a little bit less success, and you maybe end up in a situation where you're throwing into triple coverage. So I think for Lamar, there's another level for him to get here. I think people are going to really shit on him because the Ravens were as public chalk as can be. If you open TikTok over the course of a weekend, it's save us Lamar, the Swifties. We got to keep this. And it's like, I knew from that point on that I was like, I'm going to play a lot of Chiefs and feel okay about it. And I think that's really what I would take away from that game is that the public was suing to Lamar. Next year, they'll be less into Lamar because of him disappointing this year. And that's when Lamar has a better shot to break through because public chalk, the worst chalk. Horrible play calling by Monken. The end zone INT was his worst play. I don't think that was the play calling, though. That was him forcing it because likely held his hand up. Likely was like, I want the ball. And Lamar was like, all right, that guy wants the ball. He just forced it. But I don't think that was munking. I think that was a bad read by Lamar. There was some stuff underneath that was there. If you have three guys back, you have stuff underneath you can take. It's just Lamar, I think, is still we heard about the reports in the preseason, ended up not mattering over the course of the regular season fully, though we did kind of see its ugly head in the first month of the year. But like Lamar had a hard time, getting this offense right, and they did change some things around. There were some some media reports about that over the course of the week about how they did give Lamar a little bit more control in the middle half of the year, and try to simplify things for him a little bit more to give him the opportunity to make the most of that control. And I think that's where this team might need another year to bake. If Todd Monken gets another job coaching, which is still a possibility, I think that's where we could see some issues. But if we get another year of Monken in, some continuity, running back, maybe they get Dobbins back, maybe they don't. I think there is something here for Lamar to improve upon, and I wouldn't write him off, and I think people are going to really write him off. Baltimore flopping didn't shock me, but Flowers doing well did. KCC does well versus wide receiver one. That shocked me too. The Chiefs played a lot of man in general over the course of the year. Talked about that with Odell, and Odell just didn't get work. Odell got work late and then got some targets that actually did something with him. But Zay looked great. Zay has had a really hard time against man defense over the course of a year, and the Chiefs are playing it at one of the higher rates, definitely the highest rate out of the 4 teams left in the conference championship games. And he did well against that. So I think I was surprised to see that from Zay as well. I did have Zay in my best lineup on DraftKings, so a few of my best lineups on DraftKings actually. So I was able to get there as kind of a play because I wanted to fade my own Odell takes a little bit more because I just didn't think he was going to get the routes. But I would say for Zay, definitely a good showing for him in a big playoff spot. Still kind of think that, I don't know, he's going to get really highly drafted next year in best ball. He's probably going to be top 50, I would say, at the lowest. Maybe the top 40 would be probably a better guess. And I would say for Zay, I kind of feel like he is a wide receiver too. I'd love to see them get a big body guy to go with him and use Zay as more of a Tank Dell type alongside his version of a Nico to use an offense that we do like here, the Houston offense. For Zay, though, I think that he came through in a big way. So I get why he'll get steamed up, but he's another guy that I feel like if he gets steamed up and they had a wide receiver who's got some pedigree coming in, let's say Rome Odunze tests poorly at the combine, and then he's going to be the guy the Ravens land on somehow. That's the kind of player where it's I think Zay becomes a much worse play because of just having that other guy who's going to pull some targets away. Besides that, Travis Kelce with the big game. That was really the big thing to note here. He went off in a way that I rewatched the Friday video just to see where I was because I looked at my signal entry, was like, didn't I put Kelce in? I was like, no, I didn't put Kelce in. I put Rashee Rice. But I debated on stream, Kelce, Rashee Rice, Kelce, Rashee Rice. Played a lot of Kelce in my main tournament lineups overall. And I think the main thing with Kelce is that I don't know where he's going to land in terms of ownership for the Super Bowl. I think that there is going to be a little bit of people not wanting to play him. Maybe overthinking things based upon how he played this year because of the fact that he did finally have these playoff games that were big, but the regular season, people couldn't trust him. He was one of the worst plays, one of the worst picks at ADP over the course of a year. The Super Bowl, though, and I think, potentially a Super Bowl where he proposes on the field kind of thing. I think for Travis Kelce, I would have utter confidence in him moving forward. I still think, it's going to come down to ownership. Obviously, it's always the case here for a DFS slate. For Kelce, though, 11 targets in the game, caught all of them. You don't expect that to happen. But if he had caught 7, he would have had pretty much just as good of a game, still would have had a touchdown. So I think for Kelce, he established that he's still got the floor, still Patrick Mahomes' number 1 target. And as well, the fact that McCole Hardman wasn't even involved in that game. Kadarius Toney was out and then bashing the team on social media, which bums me out. Kadarius Toney, I think, could have had a better year, but you guys know that I was in the bag for him. I would say for Travis Kelce, he's the one trusted commodity besides Rashee Rice. And Rashee Rice is I think good, but he doesn't have a ton of juice. He gets obliterated on some of the swing passes they give him just because he doesn't have a lot of mobility to get out there. He's not Zay Flowers in terms of the speed, in terms of the shiftiness and all that. So I think Travis Kelce is the one the Chiefs really trust. I say going into this next round here, let me look at the matchup against the Niners. Niners tight end defense is pretty good, but still, I kind of think that doesn't matter. Only an 8% target rate allowed to tight ends overall by the Niners defense on the year. Negative 0.2 EPA is one of the weakest spots, one of the toughest spots to defend going against the Niners. They're much weaker out wide, which is where Jameson Williams had some success. So I would say that that's where you do want to attack, and that's going to benefit an MVS and a Rashee Rice a little bit more. But for Travis Kelce, I think just being that first read over and over and over again is going to be the main thing that drives his value. Soon I'll be streaming Best Ball Draft of 2024. Best content on YouTube. Thank you, David. David really making me feel good here. Immediately. I know I was watching a little bit of Pete's stream. I was getting a workout in before. It was right before the stream. And what we're going to do is the second the big board launches, we're back to 5 days a week. This year on Splashway, though, I've already kind of thought through the content plan. We're going to be doing one draft a day. It's going to be the goal here. Maybe I'll deviate here. I'm still thinking about the concept. We'll see how my workload looks. I'm trying to make it work with just Splash Play and Probably, but frankly, that's not enough revenue right now. So I don't know how the whole year is going to hold up for me with that. Point being, though, like my goal is to be doing a best ball stream 5 days a week, at least, possibly 6. But that's going to be it. So once the big board hits, you get me every day doing streams and talk about the stuff every day. So that's the goal here. And also make it a little more binge worthy by just doing one draft a day. It's going to be hard for me to stop myself from doing 10 drafts, but we will do one draft a day here. Dreading ADPs. I'm afraid I'm going to draft like a boomer this year. Yeah, look, I mean, there's going to be some changes. I think that the elite QB stuff is going to come down a little bit. I think wide receivers still going to be where they were last year. I think running backs are going to have a lot to talk themselves into, and I will find my ways to talk myself out of that for the most part of all those running backs. But we will see. I'm very excited to see ADPs as well, and maybe something we could talk about before the big board hits, because I do expect the big board at Underdog to be out next week. I know Pete talked about that as well, but they put it out last Super Bowl weekend. I would imagine they're going to do the same thing this year. So that's my expectation. What I'm going to think I might do is do an ADP preview show next week and just make my claims where guys should go. I know it's going to work, but we got to fill some airtime here on the show because we're not going to have enough to talk about next 2 weeks. So that's what we're looking at. Besides that, what do we need to talk about the Chiefs side that matters? I don't want to fixate like I did on the Lions. MVS involved enough. Again, the matchup out wide would not shock me to see MVS have a Jameson Williams adjacent game, just because the style of play those guys have, where it just takes one big play and then one or two reliable plays to give them a few more points. I think for MVS, still out there a bunch, still relied on a bunch. So I think for MVS, he's going to be in a good spot going against the Niners defense on the year. 31% targets allowed out wide, which is going to be their highest differential compared to league average, and a 0.1 EPA allowed out wide as well. So there's the one spot for the Niners defense that you can reliably attack besides running back targets. So I do think for them, I would expect that MVS for me will be a tournament play I try to get to, because nobody's going to want to play him. And he's still out there running routes. And hey, he had one big catch. Like, he sealed the game with that catch. So maybe MVS is building to it. So to myself, I'm taking a break till at least post NFL draft. I need one badly. Look, I get it. I know KG was dealing with some burnout before, but then you're having the playoff basketball success. I think ultimately, look, you have to balance it all out for yourself. I know, again, Pete, I was watching the stream right before the show, so Pete's top of mind for me. But yeah, basically, he's taking a few weeks off after the season. I don't do that. I don't, I enjoy the process of this part. And I also believe too, that like my biggest value to you guys is going to be, it's obviously, I would hope all summer long, but in particular, like February, March, like when we really have an edge and people don't know shit, I'm very good at predicting the rookie stuff, as we've seen now for a few years. So I think for me, that's why I will keep showing up here, but obviously I don't expect you guys to be here from the moment the tournaments roll out. I get how that goes. Other things to note for this game, Richie James was ahead of Hardman in the pecking order. I don't know how Hardman fell from grace to spat. I know he had the bad fumble last week that killed them, but still a stupid rule to fumble out of the end zone and then you lose the possession. Like, I don't think that should be a thing. But I think for him, really did feel like Richie James was ahead of him in the pecking order enough. Richie James also returning kicks helps him stay on the field as well, stay active on that roster. You could have Sky Moore coming back. You could have Kadarius Toney coming back, though the way it sounded with his social media posts where basically the Chiefs were lying about his injury status and he's good to go. Also dropped a ton of N-bombs on that one, so not one that I can repeat here on stream. But Kadarius Toney, I don't think will be active for the Super Bowl because it sounds like the team just doesn't want him to be active right now. So with Hardman out of the mix for the most part, Kadarius Toney maybe not active. Sky Moore, we'll see if he can even get back in. He wasn't active for this game, even though I think he could return now. It could be a spot where Richie James has that one catch for 20 yards and a touchdown, and that matters. So I do think that for Richie James, he's one guy to keep an eye on here. And Noah Gray as well for a showdown kind of tournament, going to look good as well. Purple Yoshi, about my Lions laundry. Heartbroken, but have a sick final team in a $4 DK tourney. Look, that's good news for that. Look, having anybody alive and playoff basketball feels good, especially if it's not super chalky and not get duped 100 times over. But I think with Purple Yoshi, I saw you on Twitter really caping for the Lions. I was rooting for the Lions too. My grandfather passed away a couple years back, or I guess not at this point, more than a couple years back. Grew up in Michigan, like always a Lions fan as well. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Lions because I just, they're an underdog team. Like, I think even though they have a lot of talent, fantasy people, we all love them, or a lot of people love them coming into the year. And I would say that in general for them, there's going to be good times, I hope. But, the Jared Goff contract thing is a big one because they are either going to have to, they're going to have to pay him a lot of money. Like, I think they're going to have to pay him like probably $190 million this offseason. So that might not be good for the Lions, but you have the coach, you have some players, you've hit on a lot of guys. Jahmyr Gibbs looks like he's got a lot of juice. You got Tim Robinson. You got what's his face, the other guy. You got Sam Richardson as well. So like you got good things for the Lions, but yeah, definitely a bit of a downer. Cam Thomas under 24.5 points. All right, there we go. Mathology dropping some bets in here. What's good, Spags? What's good is that we got one more game left. That's all we know. I don't really have Michigan connections. I just have a soft spot for the Lions for that one reason. But yeah, my grandfather grew up, was actually orphaned in the Michigan area and grew up in group homes and was still all state athlete in 3 sports. Like he was my favorite human being, the most inspirational man I've had in my life, and very sad to not have him there anymore. But yes, I will always revere the Lions a little bit for that reason, and also cool uniforms. That's the main thing. All right, let's look at the odds here, guys. Before we do that, though, please do smash that like button. Please subscribe here as well. Again, we had our big most viewed video ever on Friday, and I don't know how to keep YouTube rewarding the algorithm here, giving us some views. So please smash that like button if you're watching live or after the fact, and leave a comment as well if you want to drop your Super Bowl pick, want to ask me any questions, want to give your takes about anything, want to shit on me for anything I got wrong. Feel free to do that down in the comments below. And also, again, Stochastic, great way to support the show. Appreciate all you guys doing it. But NBA data, PGA data, actually, PGA MMA sims, also good. Actually won money in PGA because I was bored on Saturday afternoon and put in a few showdown lines for PGA using their sims. So, again, another thing for Stochastic. Check them out as well. Great way to support the show, too. All right, odds for this game. So this one opened up Niners -2.5. Chiefs fans / whatever have already bid down this game or bet down this game a little bit more. It is now -1 for the Niners. So 24.3 implied points to the Niners, 23.3 implied for Kansas City. The advanced analytics I look at for Sports Info Solutions should be a defensive heavy matchup. -0.2 EPA allowed on dropbacks by Kansas City, -0.21 EPA on dropbacks, or passes allowed by Kansas City as well. On the Niners side, -0.12 EPA. So technically the Chiefs defense a little bit better in terms of the expected points added metric, the ability for a team to perform over average against their defense. So that is something for both teams here. We're expecting this to be a negative EPA matchup. Of course, both offenses are good enough, but I think personally, right now, I would play towards the under, I think is the way to try to do that. Obviously, Mahomes is going to be dropping back aggressively. I do think he's going to try to get the ball out wide in particular because that is a spot you can attack in the Niners D, as we talked about. But in this situation, like, I think the Niners are a little bit undervalued in terms of the markets. I personally, who do I think wins? I like the Chiefs more as an underdog if they're a +2.5. Like, I think they're a more appealing winner to take at that bet. With this line, I think the Niners are a little bit under-respected because of the fact the last 2 weeks they have nearly blown those games. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. With 2 weeks of prep, Shanahan knows Andy Reid. We've been down this road before. This is very same coach and this very same Niners team. So I think the Niners are a little bit undervalued. It's so stupid to talk about this shit for betting because, like, you have your personal take where it's like, look, I think the Chiefs win. The Niners, though, shouldn't be a -1 point favorite. I thought initially like they should be -3.5, maybe -4.5, just because of what the teams are over the course of a year. And I think they're getting bet down because of these last 2 weeks that have been pretty variant, pretty unlucky, I think. So I don't know. I would take the Chiefs to win outright, but I would like them at a friendlier line than this one. I think they're getting a little too much public juice for the Chiefs right now. Maybe by people who were too burned by the Lamar stuff. Thanks for the free money, Mathology. Yes, and more free money every day on Probably, guys. I know we love Mathology's pick in the chat, but hey, one of us made a fucking betting app that really needs some support, so check that out. Of course, use the promo code SPLASH on Probably as well. So keep switching ads here until somebody takes advantage of an ad, but check that out. And look, underdog sticker. I also made these smaller guys. I know we got a complaint from one guy who was like, oh, the stickers are blocking the things on the screens. I was like, fuck, man. Yeah, I know you guys don't want to pay for things. You want to see stuff for free. So I made the stickers smaller, and here you go. Now you got small stickers on the side. All right, let's look at the DFS pricing here. No surprises. McCaffrey priced out the asset, an $18K salary overall at captain. So he's going to be, I would imagine, the chalk play despite that. $12K for a running back. So right away, I'll tell you guys, spoiler alert for the showdown video we're going to do in a week and a half. Christian McCaffrey at $12K is very expensive, and you can find a lot of ways to leave him out of a lineup and hope that he doesn't get there. And I think especially at captain, like, he's got the highest ceiling, but Travis Kelce has a similar ceiling. Debo's got a ceiling. Ayuk's got a ceiling. Kittle's got a ceiling. Rashee Rice has a ceiling. Pacheco has a ceiling. Mahomes has a ceiling. Purdy's got a ceiling. McCaffrey's going to be the chalk. He's probably going to be, if I had to guess right now, 20 to 25% owned a captain on that slate. At that price tag, it is too much money for McCaffrey. So right away, we're saying fade McCaffrey, which is, I'm sure, going to go well. Talk about the 47.5 line. I mean, I still think it's under. But I mean, what do you want to talk about that? I think that it plays under. I think the hard part is when you have two well-oiled machine offenses, like the defense kind of doesn't matter to some extent. But like, how did the Chiefs win the other day against Lamar? Like, they made it ugly, they mucked it up. I think that's what they're going to try to do in this game. Can Kyle Shanahan, outdo that? I don't know. The one thing I would say though, and this always hits in the Super Bowl, and you're probably getting the most inefficient line right now. Whenever it does come out, I don't know if it's out yet. I presume probably not. First quarter under is a bet you should probably hit right away. First quarter unders of the Super Bowl are like pretty reliable hits because the teams come out. It's a little bit of a boxing match, feeling each other out kind of process. But I think in this game, these teams know each other well. Again, played the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, but I still think it's going to be a thing where there is a feeling out process and trying to figure out not only feeling out themselves, but for the Niners side, like feeling out Brock Purdy. Is this the day that he has it, or is this the day that we need to like worry about him and keep him from fucking it up for everybody? And I think that's where I would take that first quarter under right away. Niners EST is boom bust. He feels like KC's going to score. I think they're going to score, but I feel like this game to me, I kind of think it's like a 24-21 game, which is close to the line, but would still be under the line. So I don't know. There's a feeling out. Yes, there is a feeling out process in the bedroom. That is true for Guy Ross here. I don't know. I think that's really what I would say for in general in this game is like, I think it plays under, but ultimately we need to know what the DFS slate is going to be. Like if everybody's playing under, I want to play over. For me, the initial take of it is going to be that the game plays under, plays a little more defensively minded. And I think too, the fact you're not instantly seeing that 50-point total, I think to me says the sharpest markets out there know this game is not quite as likely to shoot out. And I would expect the line comes down a little bit. I think it comes down to 46.5 at a minimum, maybe 46 flat. But I think it comes down. So yeah, I would say under, but it just all comes down to what's advantageous. No kickers. I think kickers will be undervalued in the slate because you have so many studs. Again, we just talk about all these guys. Like, think about guys that can give you 20 points in a game. That's really what you should be doing for any showdown slate. Is who's going to give me 15 to 20, and then what's their price points relative to that? We have McCaffrey who's possibly give you 20. Mahomes, hasn't been hitting 20 very often. Only had, I think, 15 this past week. Yeah, 15.1 last game. Hasn't hit 20 since week 15. And even then, he barely got past 20. But he's a guy that can give you 20. Kelsey can give you 20. Purdy can give you 20. Debo can give you 20. Ayuk can give you 20. Pacheco can give you 20. Rashee Rice can give you 20. Kittle can give you 20. Booty and Butker can probably not give you 20, but you're playing an outcome where like all those guys everybody thinks is going to give them 20, don't give them 20. So I think the kickers are on the menu. And I think too, these are not teams that are necessarily like locked in on going for it on fourth down. So I would say for them, like, I think the kickers are good, but tough price tags though. 5K and 5,200 for the kickers. This is not a friendly price tag, along with the 4,400 for the Niners and 3,400 for the Chiefs here. Chiefs D though. Chiefs D is the most underpriced part of the slate because they're, in my mind, they're a better defense than the Niners. The Niners were better last year. I think people carry that with them. The Chiefs defense in every metric, I mean, again, negative 0.18 EPA per dropback, negative 0.2 EPA per pass, compared to negative 0.12, negative 0.14 for the Niners. In the run game, a negative 0.02 EPA per rush compared to a negative 0.03 EPA per rush. So we're saying basically even there. In the red zone, though, the Chiefs D like shuts down a lot more. Negative 0.1 EPA per rush in the red zone, negative 0.2 EPA per pass in the red zone, compared to a 0.12 and a negative 0.3 for the Niners. I know it's a lot of like decimal numbers, but my main point is like the Chiefs defense is like a little bit better than the Niners, so they shouldn't be priced $1,000 less. And I think Chiefs D looks pretty good. What color Gatorade? Yellow. I feel like it's never yellow though. It's like usually orange, purple, right? I'd go yellow. I personally prefer yellow. What are the low price guys here on the slate? We're not going to build a line, by the way. We're just looking at price tags here. KCDST chalk. I don't know. I don't think so. I really think this is going to be one of those slates where people don't play a lot of kickers and don't play a lot of defenses. And that to me has appeal because I think this could be a slate where I play two defenses, where I play a kicker in a defense. Like, I'm willing to get those ones here and try to play the under because I think people are going to want to play a shootout for the reasons that some of you guys said, where people think the Niners defense is soft. You get 2 weeks of prep. You got a lot of film, a lot of knowledge on both sides here of the equation. I don't know. SP prop show in the future. We could do that. I mean, the tough part is like, I trust the probability data the most. So I don't even like, doing the research and game theories kind of takes, because I know that market data like I've done enough back testing to know market data matters a lot more than me kind of doing, hey, you're right, here's what you should play in a prop market. So well, we can do it, but like we would have to do it when the probability data updates, and I don't know when the prop markets are going to come in. It might not be till next week, but I will certainly keep an eye on it. And we don't have stuff at probably. We don't track like the Gatorade color kind of stuff because like U.S. sports books don't usually allow that unless some states might, but none of the major states do. We'll do something though for sure. What else to look at here? So Sky Moore at 2K, McCole Hardman 1,600, Kadarius Toney 1,400 again. Very possible that all three of these guys are inactive or soft inactives in Hardman's case. Noah Gray does get reps though. A lot of 2 tight end sets this particular weekend. Actually, some 3 tight end sets I believe I saw in the game. So Noah Gray at 1,800, I think going to be the one that stands out a little bit more projection-wise, in addition to the logic of the play. But if any of these guys are active, they're going to be in play for you to showdown, and they should be. First quarter's at 9.5. 3-3 first quarter. I could live with that. I would take the under on it. It's a low under, but I'd still take the under on it. What else do we have here? Use check at 800. Gotta imagine some use check lineup's going to be in the mix here. His wife is going to make some sick jackets for everybody involved, I am sure. But use check here at $800. He's going to get some steam. Richie James, again, if we see Kadarius Toney out, if you see Sky Moore out, Richie James at $400 is returning kicks. Valuable player to have, I think, at $400 for a tournament showdown kind of lineup. McKinnon, is McKinnon done for the year officially? He's using crutches. That's right. I think that was the last report we saw. He was using crutches as of 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago. I don't think McKinnon can get active. If he can get active, he's in a good spot because this is a good spot to attack the Niners again through that running back pass game. 18% target rate allowed to running backs is pretty high by the Niners D. A negative 0.1 EPA is not great, but still good enough because EPA is going to be lower for targeting running backs since they're closer to the line of scrimmage. So if McKinnon were to get back in at $200, he'd be an interesting play. But I think he's out for the year too, but I don't want to. We're talking about this 2 weeks out, so I don't want to necessarily say either way. Other guys here who are $200, really don't think any of these guys will matter very much. Charlie Werner, maybe as like a dart throw tight end who catches a touchdown that Kittle doesn't. But not a lot to love down here. Why's Willie Snead on a roster? He was on the active roster this weekend? All right, I didn't know that about Willie Snead. Willie Snead, I guess, theoretically in play if he's going to be active for the Super Bowl as well. But again, not a lot to love these low-price guys. If I were going to plant a flag for any of them, Juszczyk, Richie James, and if Willie Snead is active, they would be in a player pool for me, though Snead, I can't imagine, would actually make a lineup. Richie James would. Juszczyk would. So I think those are the guys right away that I'd plant that little bit of a flag for. Noah Gray, though, the more logical target at 1,800, I think. And MVS at 3K flat. MVS cheaper? Oh, no. So MVS is cheaper than the defenses and cheaper than the kickers. So if the defenses and kickers look like they're going to get ownership, an MVS lineup coming over the top is a way to do that. That could be interesting. He was in street clothes. Saw Snead in the sideline, the broadcast, surprised he was still alive. So he was active and not wearing a uniform? Is that a thing? All right, whatever. MVS chalk. I don't think he gets to be chalk. People hate MVS, man. MVS has burned a lot of people. You got to think about the longitudinal parts of like how much a guy has either made people money and how much the enthusiasm was for them. There's a lot of enthusiasm for MVS. He made people no money. After that, nobody wanted to go to MVS. And you also have like no big box score games for a while. Oh, the alert just said he was active. They're the DK alert. Whatever. Doesn't matter. We don't need to belabor the Willie Snead conversation points. 2 for 2 here, and that's on mine to be clear, not Ross. Ross correcting me is definitely a good thing. 2 for 2 here for 38 yards for MVS. He hasn't had a game over 10 since week 7. No, I don't think MVS chalk. I would say MVS not chalk, if anything. Maybe he gets chalky for sim guys because that is too cheap for a guy who runs as many routes as MVS does. But I don't think for the public, they are not going to play MVS. They'll be much more comfortable, I think, honestly, they might be more comfortable going to Watson over MVS, which is logical, even though Watson is like the same fucking play for a showdown. Eli Mitchell, probably not going to get owned that much. Just people hate MVS. Never undersell how much people hate MVS. MVS and James will be clicked with CMC at 12K. All right, I'm not going to submit this build, but let's see. All right, so we do a McCaffrey captain. What do you do here to get this price and build a logical lineup for people? Let's try to build like what the chalk lineup should be. So McCaffrey at captain, we do believe that should be something that people will own pretty well. I think relative to the price tags, I think Kittle will come up as a flex play. Relative to the price tags, I think, does Pacheco still get in with no other running backs taking snaps away? I think he gets close. It's either Pacheco or Rice. Honestly, maybe both. And then I think you're getting one of the kickers and defenses. Who would project better as a kicker? Butker's had more points on the year. We'll say Butker. Maybe Niners D. I think this is it. But no QBs in it? That can't be right. There's probably a QB in a pure, like a real chalk lineup. Let's go off of that. Are people going to play Mahomes or Purdy? I think Purdy's going to project better. He's a little bit cheaper. All right, we're going to go Purdy over Mahomes. Again, we're trying to build a chalk lineup. This is not me trying to build a lineup that I actually like. No defense. What do we get then? Yeah, you might be right. It might be people land on MVS then as the guy to get to this build. MVS or Richie James at 400. The projections are probably not that different. This past week, MVS is projected for 3.9. Justin Watson was also projected for 3.9. Hold on. Let me just see real fast. What was the projection for Richie James? Imagine it's like 1. Richie James had a 2-point projection. So relative to salaries, if they were to keep these same projections, then people will go Richie James. Kelsey over Rice in the chalk build. Really? I don't think people can afford to get Kelsey here. Okay, but we put Kelsey in instead of Rashee Rice. Yeah, and then Butker. Okay, yeah, this is probably closer to the chalk build. Yeah, 17 snaps for James last game. So McCaffrey, Kittle, Purdy, Kelsey, James, Butker, or McCaffrey, Kittle, Purdy, Kelsey, MVS, Justin Watson, or Noah Gray. Yeah, I think you might be right. It's definitely one of these, though. I agree that this is the base. Like, this is probably the chalk game base. McCaffrey at captain with Kittle, with Purdy, with Kelsey. I think that would be the one that comes through. Yeah, Watson, you think would be it? I agree that this would be the build for this particular one, though Noah Gray's projection was pretty close to Watson's too. Yeah, Noah Gray was projected higher. No, he's projected 3.3. So he was lower than McCole Hardman, lower than MVS, lower than Justin Watson. Yeah, it might be Justin Watson. So this is probably what the chalk build is, either this one or the one that I just showed you guys with a few pivots to Richie James. But I think this is the chalk. So that's what we're going to go with here, is what we're assuming coming in would be a 3-3 build then. So what do we always talk about here? If we did get a chalk 3-3, definitely want to see a 5-1 build. Showdowns for sure going to be ones we're just trying to build lineups. We always talk about it, of course, here, but if you haven't watched the videos for some reason, you just want to get to off the beaten path of like what everybody's going to be playing. And for a Super Bowl with a lot of guys, again, that can put up those 20-point games, I think that a 3-3 build makes sense in terms of one that people will land on a lot. So prepare to hear a lot about me saying play on slots, play 4-2s, whatever. But we'll obviously figure that out as we get projections and more data in. We will review that more. But I think this is going to be the chalk or the last one we looked at. I think that's it for now, guys. So I don't know what the schedule is for this week, to be honest. I think Wednesday, what I'm going to try to do is one more rookie video and have it be like my definitive rookie video where I'm putting out my takes. And then next week, I think what I'll do in the midweek will be doing the ADP preview and trying to figure out what I think ADP should be. I don't know how I can lay that out and make it look good, but that's going to be the focus here. And then this Friday, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do for Friday. I've really got to figure out what the content flow is. Once the big board comes out, it'll be easy here. But the next few weeks might be weird, even though I'm very willing to do content. I'm not just going to do streams for the sake of showing up and not having anything to talk about here. So prepare for a stream at least on Wednesday this week. If not Friday, but we'll try to do both. And that's going to be it for this video. So again, guys, if you can, please do subscribe down below. Of course, Splash Play on that march to 4K subs now, 5K subs, 10K subs, a million K subs, and I can't do it without you. So please do smash that like button. Leave a comment if you're watching the fact. Appreciate both of those very much. Check out Stochastic as well. Again, all the data, all the tools as well. They have a new all-access SIM pass, which you can get for that 15% off as well by using the link in the description or using the promo code SPLASH on Stochastic. Again, a great way to support the show. Great way to also get great data for yourself. That's winning people, legitimately millions of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in NBA as well. So get it in for yourself. I swear by it. I played PGA. I didn't do any research at all. I just put in 20 max lineups and then a couple in other tournaments and ended up having a profit in PGA this weekend as well. So I think that's what you get at Stochastic. And that's, they put a lot of work to those tools. Our betting tool is better than OddsShopper. And that's one thing I will nickel and dime them for. Besides that, though, their DFS tools are the best in the biz. And, there are other great ones out there as well. But Stochastic, you get 50% off. So do that for yourself. And of course, Probably, you want to support the show. The best way to do that is support Probly. Use promo code SPLASH on there. Save 50% each month, or I guess for your first month, rather. All of our pregame data for under $10 for your first month. All of our live in-game data for $25 for your first month. It's even cheaper if you get a year. And frankly, it would help me out a lot more if you get a year too. So please support Probly. If you love Splash Play, if you love the idea of me doing an NBA channel, which I'm thinking about, then you should support Probly, because Probably making money means I can do this stuff. So if that's the reality of the situation. So please do that. Shout out to all the people who hit the join button down below. You too can get on this list of fine folks here by joining down below for under $5 a month. You also get all my data, some members only streams, including you guys. I think getting the opportunity to be in tournaments with me will be a thing we do in 2024. So hit that join button down below, support the show, help me keep doing it, and also support yourself by getting my data each week. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. And I'll be back with you guys again soon. So I'll see you guys. Plan is on Wednesday. More rookie talk. Otherwise, enjoy your days. And of course, good luck. Bye.